I came here in 1944, so.
We were students at Nearings Hall from maybe, 48 to 50. We graduated in 51.
I graduated in 51.
In the fall of 1954, I was in the very first group of young sisters who left the novitiate and came here to complete our bachelor degree at Webster College.
We were the second class, 1955 to 57.
I was in the House of Studies 1955 to 57, I think it was, and finished college at Webster is what we did.
1959 to 61.
My connection with the center actually is, my name is in the cornerstone.
I was the third directress at Loretto House of Studies in St. Louis.
My history with the center goes back before it was complete.
I lived in an apartment with another sister, but we always considered 590 our home. And I lived at 590 for, about 8 years, I think.
I'm a sister of Loretto, and I'm going on to 90 years.
We're all here to tell the story of Loretto Center, but it can't be told without telling the story of Nearings Hall High School and the Loretto House of Studies. So we'll tell all three stories and show how the occupants of these several houses choreographed their lives over the years.
The early high school was up at Webster College, but then it was important for them to establish a high school independently of Webster. And so fortunately they were able to purchase this wonderful land here.
We bought the property from Captain Lockwood. That's why the street is named Lockwood out here. This was just a huge piece of property. Everything else came later after, once we bought the White House, the Lockwood House. The school, Nearings Hall, was in the White House. There was a gym that was built on the property.
There were a lot of girls' schools, and St. Louis is unique for that. I went to school at St. Anne's in Normandy, and I loved the Sisters of Loretto. But in 7th grade, moved to Kirkwood, and I was not very happy. But I got to go to Nearings in 1944, and there were 134 in the school. It was in the White House. Everything was at the White House. It was such fun to say to people that our classrooms had fireplaces, that it was a home, and it just felt like a home. We had fabulous teachers.
Well, in 1947, I followed my friends to this unknown place called Nearings Hall. It was an old, famous, historic house at Lockwood and Big Bend. It was a lovely, simple place. Wouldn't you say that?
I'd say it had this, still had the sense of being a house. It felt homey in a school sort of way.
In 54, the first wing of the school was built. Because that had happened, that was why my group of young sisters was able to come. We took over the White House for our residency.
The placement of the House of Studies at 590 East Lockwood has its roots in Pope Pius XII's directive to the major superiors of religious women to make the changes necessary for the sisters to do their work more effectively. This directive coincided with efforts already underway among women's religious communities in the Sister Formation Conference, of which our Sister Florence and Mother Mary Luke were influential leaders.
The first year, we didn't even have a place to eat. We had no dining room. During the spring and the summer of that first year, they began the construction of the bungalow. And the bungalow was being created at that time to serve as our kitchen and dining room.
We lived in these dorms that were in the White House. I remember the beds being so close that you could bump into somebody right next to you. Your beds were so close.
I actually lived in the White House with about 40 plus other people in that house. And we had one little study room with, desks wall to wall to wall. And, and then we walked back and forth to Webster for class. But it became obvious, I think, to everybody that this was not exactly the best situation, with a few bathrooms and not enough space for anybody. And so the old wing of the center was built then with that in mind, that the sisters would move in there for the House of Studies. My name is in the cornerstone because we left there as it was being built.
And at that time we only had the back wing, and on the ground floor was a community room, a laundry, and a trunk room. And the second and third floors were bedrooms, bathrooms, showers, and the superior's office. And in each room, a combination chest of drawers and closet. Now in those days, we were still wearing the habit, so we didn't need a lot of closet space. In 59 and 60, the dining room and the kitchen were in the bungalow. The chapel was in the White House, or the Lockwood House. In 60 and 61, the dining room, the kitchen, and a classroom were in the White House. The caretaker and his wife, who lived in the White House, moved to the bungalow. During that time, Mother Florence Wolfe, as the council was known at that time, was our superior, and she was also the head of the Sister Formation Conference, which was just being formed, and her office was in the White House. Another thing that was in the White House was the Loretto magazine was mailed from there.
So it was about the second year that I was there that the new wing was put up. Well, when we got to the new building, we were used to assigning people rooms. Instead of doing that, of assigning them, we had bought new lamps for all the rooms in the new wing. So we put room numbers on the bottom, but we didn't tell them the room numbers were there. So after supper one evening, we said, everybody pick up a lamp and take it to the new part and look at the bottom, and that's the room you're going to be in. We didn't care if they traded off, it didn't bother us at all, but we didn't assign them. And that was kind of interesting to them, that they could pick out where they wanted to be. At one time, we had 70 people in that House of Studies. That House of Studies, the new wing, was furnished by S&H Green Stamps because a call was put out by the General Council that anybody who was saving S&H Green Stamps should send them to the House of Studies. We bought all the bedspreads, the pillows, the blankets, the dishes for the dining room on S&H Green Stamps.
I was a senior at Nearings in 1961, and at that time the new wing had not been built, and it was just the back wing on the tail end of the property over there. And I went off to the novitiate, and I was there for 2.5 years, and when I came back, the whole building was complete. And I can remember walking into this chapel and being just stunned by the beauty of it. It had representations of art that our sisters had done.
At that time, it was a real treasure for any Sister of Formation place to have a big building like that. It was very good.
To everyone's surprise, it was barely 6 years later that the number of sister students diminished radically. In 1968, brand new plans were laid out for the use of what had been the House of Studies. The White House would become an experimental community of sisters running their affairs without a superior. The older wing of the House of Studies would become the Loretto Learning Center, headed by Sister Helene McLeese and staffed by sisters and others working with one student at a time. The newer wing would become a traditional community with Sister Michaela Collins as superior. Residents included teachers from Nearings, Webster College, and elsewhere. And within a decade, The retired sisters from Lafayette would join this community.
At first, when we had provinces, the 590 residence was known as the Province House. And for many years, that's the way we recognized it. And then after we didn't have the provinces any longer, everybody just changed it to the address 590. I knew Helene, and she did a wonderful job with setting up that reading center because it helped so many of the students from all over. I know it was an exceptional opportunity for students to go there for special help. And I know it was well known all over the city of St. Louis. I lived in an apartment with another sister, but we always considered 590 our home. We would go there for many of the feast days, always the holidays, and of course for funerals or special occasions when our sisters would celebrate their jubilees or, special birthdays with the families. We would all join there. It was just a wonderful meeting place. I remember how grateful I was after I had heart surgery. I recuperated there for 9 days. They had a nurse and aides there, and I got wonderful nursing care.
When they hired me, there were like 30 people in the community, or 32 people. By the time I got there were only 28. So it was clear that we needed to do something to warrant keeping the center open. Started with a couple of Dominicans and opened it up, and then also took in students from Webster, a couple of students, and from St. Louis University.
We had some Dominican sisters. They would pitch in and help as much as anybody. So one of them had the dining room, and she just kept it so good. And they helped decorate at Christmas time. They didn't live off by themselves. They were right in community there. And also Tom, the maintenance man, he was such a good guy. Then he fell off the roof. And so that slowed him down a little bit. He fell, it isn't funny, but he laughed, and so we laughed at him. I said, you'd make a terrible Santa Claus. We had bingo every week. Sister Concetta was there. So we had bingo religiously. The puzzles were out in the hall on a big long table. Sister Karina, she would be out there almost all day. She just loved to work that puzzle. And she had one real big one, and that was huge, and they shellacked it and hung it up on the wall.
Those big places were very costly to run, and the income from the other communities and people helped defray those costs. When they moved everybody from Lafayette, we had rooms there available for people. We also began to take, because of the nursing care, Jeannie Duber's mother, Carol Ann's mother, Mary Catherine's mother, Mary Swain's mother. They were a big addition to the place too. They were fun to have. The community worked to establish it as a center for the community in St. Louis.
And it was well named as a center because it was the center of Loretto activities in all of that area. And I'm sure you've heard loads of stories about the chapel, which is very special and has very unusual, very tall, very modern, beautiful stained glass windows.
In 1981, Sister Georgianne and I started doing music in this chapel on Saturdays. So for, 35 years, I guess, I've done music on Saturdays, and then gradually moved into Sundays. Because I play guitar, I always looked out on the community while I played. So I see lots of faces. Lots and lots of faces.
You just cherish all the people you knew there that lived there, and it just meant so much to all of us in St. Louis. It's a wonderful memory, but a difficult one to have to say goodbye to all of that.
I know it has to be. I know we don't have the money to do this, so times change. Go with it. God took care of us so far.
It's what needs to happen. It's time. It served its purpose. I'm kind of proud of the person that was here when all the stuff went up for the first time when we started, and I'm here when everything is closing down. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There are other ways in which the community will find about getting together and celebrating together, but the building will be missed, and that's very true.
I hope that the spirit of Loretto will stay, will be in St. Louis still, especially relating to the Nerinx girls. I think that's important for us to keep in contact with the Nerinx girls.
I'm hoping that the Loretto spirit and its dedication to good education will somehow eke out of these walls into the people who come after us.
Nerinx Hall High School, Loretto Center, has a great and glorious past. And not only does it have a great and glorious past, but it has a great and glorious future to look forward to. In order to ensure that Loretto values continue in that school, the faculty have formed what we call a Loretto Circle. They're really determined to continue the values of Loretto. We're really lucky to have that kind of a faculty who really have, through the years, imbibed the spirit of Loretto, the values of Loretto, and really are committed to continuing that down through the ages. So we can be very, very proud of this school and of all that's happened on this property.